Hello, hello, everyone.
Right. That music ends too early, just like the old one did. The old
music. That's what just getting started.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
hey, everyone. Greetings once again. It's been another week, and it's Hump Day again. So here we are for Hump Day Q&A.
Oh, when did we go?
I know. Well, I think it went 7 days away. it's like kind of does that. That's a recycling feature about it.
It's like it happens every week. It's amazing, right?
Yes. Like that. There's a middle of the week every week. Thank goodness, so that we could know when to do our show.
So let's do some quick introductions, and then we can crack on.
Sure.
My name's Simon Lightfoot, Flutter Community Leader, CTO at Dev Angels London, at Dev Angels London on any social media platforms. I'm sure you'll find me around. Randall.
I'm Randall Schwartz. I'm a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert and being taunted by flies all of a sudden, darn it. That means I spend a lot of my time answering questions online and all the socials. So places like Discord and used to be Facebook and at least in Reddit and Stack Overflow and places like that. And also I am for this show, the question magician, which means that I am watching the chat for you to say Q: in front of a question that is meant to address to us. And we will flag those especially. Don't repeat the question, though, because if you repeat it, you lose your place in line. So that's my job for today. That and help and provide color commentary for Simon's answers.
And John.
John Wheezy. So I spend my days working in the AI realm for Microsoft, and my evenings and free time doing whatever Flutter I can do, helping out, answer questions in numerous places like Randall, and then managing the Flutter community medium.
Cool.
So, I guess, where's the do's and don'ts?
Danielle's not here today.
Right,
Danielle's not here.
Danielle's not here today. You may be joining for some other people. We'll see. But
I see somebody. I see an eligible person in the chat room already. So, yay. Yep. So here we go. So again, just a few simple rules here. Be nice, be respectful, be constructive. You're not talking to bots at the other end of the chat, although I may still be a bot. I don't know yet. So be respectful. You are speaking with human beings out here. Don't post anything if it's adult content or rude or offensive. Don't advertise or promote anything. The only people allowed to promote things are people with their face on the screen. So if you want to promote something, get invited to be on the show, and then we can promote whatever you want. Don't spam. Don't post the same thing again and again. It's annoying. And as I mentioned before, if you post the same question a second time, you lose your place in line, and we just answer it a lot later in the show. Too bad. Harassment of any kind, not tolerated. We have ban hammers, and we use them. But do have a good time. We have a good time sharing what we know. That's why we're back week after week, participating, giving up our copious spare hours to be able to do stuff like this.
Yeah.
Copious, I wish.
Copious, yeah. And if you're posting questions, if you're posting questions that have code, should we go to the next slide?
Indeed.
Yeah. So if you have code that you want to share with us, don't just give us a link, because anybody who posts a link in the chat, you're the only one that sees it. We never see it. Nobody else sees it. So if you need to share code with us, the way to do it is use gist. Head over to gist.new. Make sure you give it an interesting title and description and a file name that ends with .dart, so we get all the lovely formatting. Put your code in there and change it to public down there in the bottom right, the little green button. And then once it's created, it will switch to a different view, and you'll have a URL that has the nice hash code at the end. So that's what you share with us. Share the hash code, and then we can go find it.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. Let's crack on, I guess. Oh, let's do that. Yeah. Matthew, you're welcome on the show.
Yep.
We could talk about his game that he built, his little flipper game.
I think
we mentioned it a little bit last week.
Did we talk about that one?
We talked about that last week, didn't we?
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Well, I've been gone a few weeks, so you may have.
You're forgiven.
I actually have a few things to mention though. So
yeah.
Let's see if I can get these up.
Didn't some content finish like last week? So there's a lot of videos up now. Is there some, or is that coming up soon when there's going to be a conference finished? Something in Europe is happening. Is it last week?
Lots of con Europe. Flutter and Friends just happened last week.
That's the videos up.
And the videos are about for that. Yeah. In fact, I should reach out and find out if maybe next week we'll be joined by not Lucas. I'm gonna the guys.
The other guy.
The other one. Anyway. So I saw that Seth Ladd posted reposted one of the community members, Christian. He's managed to do a VST plugin for in pure Dart and Flutter. So for those that don't know, VST plugin is let me see if I can bring this up. This comes up on the stream. Makes that thing bigger. There we go. Yeah. So if you've got any sort of a lot of audio packages when you're running audio, they allow you to process audio. So in this case, you can put in your own sort of plugins in a lot of the software, and they're called VST plugins. And he's made one all in pure Dart and Flutter, which I think is just
wow.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we want to see, right? Like the extension of Flutter into other worlds. Hey, Matthew, welcome.
Hey, oh my gosh. So I was about to ask, what did I miss? And what I missed is one of my old hobbies. I used to do music production. So good grief. So they're using Flutter for VSTs now? That's epic. Oh my gosh.
Christian for
that's great.
Christian, if you're watching, that's incredible. I love it. I love it.
Definitely. We've also got I just saw this as well. Ray Lee, another guy from the community, has been working on a navigation utils package. And I saw this and I thought this is actually kind of interesting. The missing navigation library for Flutter's Navigator 2. Navigation util makes it easy to implement Navigator 2 in your Flutter app. So basically, it's another Navigation 2 implementation, right? So we already had Go routers, we know, right? But I kind of like this. Like it's a re-implementation of Navigator 1 with 2. So you get push, pop, push, and replace still. But you have full control over the stack with like set. So you can just set whatever ones you want, which is just nice and simple. You still have your named path-based router support and convenient functions for setting the URL. So yeah, it's the the usual stuff. But I feel like there's it maybe has some life to it. I kind of like find it quite interesting.
We could use some competition in that space. So nice.
Yeah.
So time for a Matthew hot take. There has not been a Flutter routing solution that I've actually liked yet. I'll be honest with you. Like all of them have something that I dislike.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've used AutoRoute and I have a long list of grievances with AutoRoute. And I've used GoRouter and it's better, but it's still not there. So anyone who can crack Flutter routing and make it a little bit less obtuse, I'm here for it. 100%.
Yeah. What about App Router? Never tried it.
I've not used that one.
Tried that one.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's some sort of deep link stuff in there as well. So you've got like deep link, destination label, some other sort of handling stuff. So it seems intriguing, shall we say? Whether or not it's so you got this kind of like this is on like deep authenticated, indicates the user is authenticated. I kind of like the idea that routing automatically has the ability to have authentication built in, which is something that like you always want, right? Is the user logged in? Can they access this section? Because if they're not logged in, they can't access it, right? Ask them to log in, and then you then go back to that section. I mean, it seems like a pretty standard thing to do now. So you've got this route guards with authentication, which I kind of like.
And there's a lot of ways to get that wrong too, which means it's not immediately obvious when you've gotten it wrong because it sort of works for the good paths all the time.
Yeah.
Because you build it for the good paths, but the bad paths are who knows if it's actually doing its job to keep bad people away from good places. So
Flutter Universe said Go Router. He meant not App Router. So,
yes,
we have tried Go Router, and frankly,
we've used that.
It is my go-to at the moment, but there's still things I just find just awkward in it that I feel like it could, it's definitely not there yet. So I'm kind of eager to try.
Is it still having a breaking change every 6 months again? Because that was one of my biggest issues with it. We were up to like version 15 or 16 now with GoRouter.
I think it's pretty much settled now for the most part.
I'll tell you a weird challenge that I've run into is like, okay, you've got your app guards that are protecting areas. So what happens when you need to deep link into a protected area of your app?
Oh, yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say. And here, look, deep. Where is it?
Sorry, that was involuntary, guys.
So you define.
You seem to be pleased with this.
So you define deep link destinations, right? Which is like listed for config. So here's like the URL coming in, and here's where you want it to go. But on top of that, you can define like, what the backstack should be for that deep link. Should I exclude certain things? How should it be processed? How do I map the arguments? Is authentication required? Like, I feel like it's kind of got that kind of modality that you actually want, I'm constantly re-implementing this, right? Yeah. And I'm just like, well, it'd be nice to like see if that, you implement it once and it's just done. Like redirect functions, specify custom load for redirections. So the function is a vote. So it contains ID and contains action and redirect to this new destination, otherwise term false. It just seems like quite, well thought out.
Nice.
But it's still early days, right? It's quite an early, I can't remember what version one here, but it's still early days. But when was that you up? Yeah, and then there's also hot reload for routes as well, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Which has just been added, basically, and that's what he was publishing about. But, it's still early days.
I'm going to take a peek at this for my next project. I think most people know I'm all about like the rapid prototyping, small projects. So I'm game to try it, like 100%.
And then I'll pop a link to the package in the chat for anyone that wants to go take a look. Also, Killian, author and creator of Jasper, has just released a new version. This has breaking changes. However, I'm really happy with this, right? So first of all, he's done a Jasper migrate command, so it was easy to migrate your code. So that's really nice, like a fix-up thing. And here's the TLDR. Simplified build methods. All component build methods now return a single component instead of iterable component. I have to say, if you haven't written Jasper, this is one of those things that is super annoying is the wrong word. It's kind of like you coming from Flutter, and the idea of doing Jasper is that, you can do things in a Flutter style way. However, Flutter is always the singular component that you return back, singular widget that you return back from build. And forever, I'm just like yield one, or like, return a blank list with just one, an empty list with one item in, basically. And I feel like it was just adding lots of extra steps when you don't need them in a lot of ways. There's a reason for this, is just because of the way that the DOM tree works, and that it works with the way it connects the tree together is different to how Flutter works. However, if you process it correctly, you can still optimize it out and make it work. And so rather than giving the control to the widget and having it do it, the framework can now optimize that out and properly handle it for the use case of individual widgets, which I think is kind of nice. It's certainly better. I feel like it's certainly more idiomatic in Flutter, as it were, the way that you approach it, which is really nice. Unified component factories, again, another one. So you factory constructors for core component classes, replacing DOM, text, and fragment classes, which is nice. Just does that kind of cleanup stuff. Migration, obviously. The base parameter document now can now be set to null to suppress the base element in the code, and then there's expanding the CSS support, obviously, which is nice. But yeah, I think like this is the kind of, I don't know if you guys have used it, but this is the kind of thing. This is the old and this is the new, right? So simple return. You don't have to do like sync star or iterable or whatever. Builder functions again, no need to yield or sync. Like it's just that, just simplifying that kind of aspect of it makes a big difference, I think.
You get nested components then. I mean, because one of the things that was nice about it being an iterable is you could return 5 things and it would automatically make that all one chunk of text.
Yeah, but for the most part, you return back a component itself, like a DOM component, like a div tag or something that contains a child set list. It's the same thing about Flutter. Like you're returning back a row or column with content in.
Yeah,
I mean, there is those times. I have to say, there is those times in Flutter when I'm like, when I'm doing a layout, and I wish I could just return back a list of widgets.
Yeah.
From a build method. There's no reason why that like from a perspective of like how the system works, it should be possible. It's just that we just don't have a widget for that. I can't think of. I'm sure there's some little niggling thing that makes that really difficult, but.
Well, you have to know you have to give some sort of layout structure for how these multiple widgets are going to be combined. So
no, what I'm trying to say is, so let's say let me give an example here. You've got a parent which is a row or column, like you've got a parent widget that has a row column in it. And then you have children, and you want to like put another widget in there, but what you don't want to do is have like a builder function that returns back a set of widgets. You rather have like almost have that cacheable. So you've got one widget that acts as if it's a series of widgets to put into a row or column. So either you basically have to shift around your widgets and stuff to kind of do it a different way. But if you wanted that flexibility from a perspective of the element and render trees, that makes no difference, right? Like you could still configure it to have the same output in that sense. It's just that the widget tree would be different.
Can you clarify, Simon? I'm somewhat confused. So you want just an actual widget that returns a list of widgets as opposed to a list of type widget?
No, I'm saying that in Flutter right now. So forget Jasper, obviously, for a second, right?
Okay.
I'm saying in Flutter at the moment, every build method returns a widget, one singular widget, right? And you can't return a list of widgets.
Oh.
So if you had a parent element that has children, is a multi-child, render object or whatever.
I'm with you now.
That can accept multiple.
I'm with you now.
There's no way of actually injecting that in directly. You actually have to essentially have a function that returns back a list, and then like use the spread operator to kind of lift it out into the parent, and do that at build time rather than kind of have it handled in the framework.
Hey, Ray's here.
Ray's here.
Comments.
Summoned by Simon. You're welcome to come on the show, Ray, if you want to have a chat about what you've been doing there. Send you a link.
I'll just say, Ray, I'm excited to try it out. You've solved a couple problems that I'm, as we noticed earlier, I'm excited about. So
it does. It's that kind of thing of like I looked at it as like, this solves so many of those issues that you've got, and it's like, I feel it's like it's like Go Router wanted to be but didn't achieve, right? I think there's always going to be. I'm sure there'll be times that if I use navigation utils, it's like just doesn't do exactly what I want. I'm sure there'll be those. That's the point of doing it yourself, right? If you can't get a library to do it, you do it yourself, right? But at the same time, I feel like there's more solutions than problems with what I'm seeing. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, right, get your questions in, everyone. Come on.
Let's get one question is navigation related.
Wow.
Yeah, a navigation related question if you want to do that. Is it hard to do deep linking with normal navigation without using a package? Yeah.
That's a good question.
It depends on what you mean by hard.
So deep linking is there's lots of parts of that topic, right? So one is you need to configure your native platform code, right? So that's your iOS, your Android, your Windows, your Linux, whatever it is to support deep linking, right? So that's the first thing, right? And that's specific to your use case, what domain you've got, how you're linking in, custom schema, whatever. There's tons of ways there. Are you using a third-party package of deep linking and manage it for you? There's all sorts. So that's one thing you need to think about. The other thing you need to think about is once you configure that, that's just configurations. That's just a manual step you need to do once. Then there's a way of how do you get the links that were pressed into the app, right? So by default, Flutter actually now supports this, and it does it with the standard navigation API. Hang on, and I've lost. There it is.
It's so funny because I just went through the whole configuration and setting up of the deep linking process for my app that is like a bonus to my my FlutterCon Europe talk. Which, if you guys haven't booked your tickets for FlutterCon Europe, it's awesome. It's going to be awesome. I went to NYC.
Oh yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. So. But I just went through this, and I think the most obtuse part of it is setting up the well-known files on a web server, because I was what so I ended up just doing it on Firebase because I don't want to administrate a web server just for this. But anyway.
I'm not sure. I'm kind of curious. I'm not sure how that sits now with the new removing Firebase dynamic links. I think the Firebase hosting still generates those files for you if you put in your Firebase configuration. Interesting. We have a Ray here. So Ray, are you here, Ray? Can you hear us?
Hey, hello. Hi, Simon. Hi, Randall.
Hey, hi, Ray.
And hello, the rest of everyone here. Thanks for letting me join and inviting me. Simon summoned me, and I caught some good words about navigation utils. So thank you all so much. You don't get much praise nowadays for build-in packages, but so I'm here to answer any questions. Navigation utils, I don't know how much you've talked about it, but I can share some perhaps interesting details just very briefly. It's been in development. It's been developed over a period of 3 years. Time passes quite quickly, and it has over 1,200 hours of my work and labor put into it. So I am quite proud of the package itself. And yesterday, I felt really good. There was a big win yesterday. I finally managed to get Hot Reload working with the navigation package. And perhaps that's, Simon, you saw that on Twitter. I came back to Twitter. I shared that. So if you don't know, previously with navigation and with my package as well, if you made any changes to your navigation list of navigation routes, you would need to hot restart the app. And sometimes you would actually need to stop the app and restart it. And that actually breaks your development flow. So that was a problem that, I've been dealing with for all these years, for 3 years at least now. And I was like, okay, this is not good. I've learned more progressively over time about Flutter's internal state management lifecycle, how set state works, and this was, a natural next level in my progression of learning more about Flutter. And with that knowledge, I was able to say, hey, I can actually finally, attempt to tackle and fix this problem. So yes, the pain and suffering we go through as developers, it stacks up over time. So we are left quite traumatic, but we are also left with, the experience. And that allows us to make our lives easier in the end, actually. That's pretty cool. And if you go to the README at the very bottom, I added the section explaining what, how, and why. And there was this really interesting life cycle callback called reassemble in Flutter. This is my first time using it. It's called only when you're in debug and development mode. And it's, I guess, someone much smarter than me on the Flutter team, they thankfully added it in to allow us to do things like this. And the fix is really, really simple. When you hot reload, reassemble gets called. That's a Flutter lifecycle call. And inside it, you can just set your updated routes. And then this will work not only with my package, but whatever navigation package you're using, you can use the same technique. So that was pretty cool, and I wanted to share that.
So when you were looking at creating this, what was the problem you were trying to solve that wasn't being solved adequately by other packages? Because that's going to help us understand where this is positioned in the ecosystem.
Yeah, so navigation utils, first and foremost, does web navigation correctly. So when I first started building this package, I was building Codelessly, and I'm still am building Codelessly, my company. It's a Flutter AI editor, so it like Bolt and Lovable. So definitely go check out Codelessly. Just a quick plug there, codelessly.com. But when I was building navigation utils at the beginning in Codelessly, web navigation wasn't working. The URLs, I needed just this simple query parameters, and that was such a struggle. So to solve that problem, I had to spend over 1,000 hours just creating my own package. But at the end of the day, I think solving the web navigation, getting URL routing working correctly, that's one of the main, that's the primary, I guess, one of the core selling points of navigation utils. And then second is the list of navigation routes and the list of deep links. So that was also very important to me philosophically, because I don't want the navigation to be represented in the code. I want it to be data driven. So a data driven navigation system where all your routes are listed as data, are represented as data, and all your deep links are also represented as data.
So I've known about your package for about 15 minutes now. So do you require Build Runner to make this work, or is it because my current navigation package that I'm using for my main project requires Build Runner to actually generate?
Is that auto route?
Yeah, it's auto route. And I guess my second question is, do you support tabbed navigation by default inside of your routing package?
So it's all about nested navigation there, right? Really?
Yeah, nested navigation, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, great questions, and great to meet you, Matthew.
Oh, nice to meet you.
So first question. Sorry, can you remind me of your first question again?
Build Runner and nested navigation.
Right.
Those are the two things I'm curious about.
Okay, so Build Runner, no, navigation utils does not use Build Runner. That's a deliberate choice. So what you do give up is you give up annotations. So any pages, you have to manually, list out the page. So you have to go in to the list of routes and you have to type it in yourself. So you don't get any auto magic. You annotate a page, and then it figures out the queries. It figures out the types. So you also lose type safety when you're passing data between pages. So you have to do that manually. You don't get automatic type adapters. So no build runner, but also trade-offs, and the benefit is no build runner.
Yeah.
I would say on that front, this has always been an issue, right, from mobile development. So from the Android days, just want to just kind of explain where this kind of comes from a little bit. From the Android days, you would have activities, right? An activity takes up your entire screen. It takes the full focus of the user. And to transition from one activity to the other, you could only pass serializable data, right? So there's a data, basically anything that can be converted into a string, essentially. And this is the same thing in terms of routes on Flutter, in terms of that a route is normally represented by a string, and you can attach. You've got two ways of doing it, and this is all the routing packages do this, right? Which is like you have your named routes, which is specify a path and parameters and such like on your actual route that you're looking up. And this works with deep linking then, so that's an external link from your application coming in as text. But when you're working internally, obviously you can just pass around like an ID, and if you've got like a global singleton that stores your objects, then you can just refer to that object in your new route. So you don't necessarily have to serialize something across the two routes. You can get away with looking up the data from the same location. John, your camera has gone really funky for me. I don't know if that's anyone else as well.
Wow, yeah.
If you could make that intentional, it's giving me Max Headroom vibes.
Let me. Oh, you know what happened?
Restart.
I know what happened. So
anyway, so what I was getting at with the routing there is just that although you do lose type safety in the sense of if you have to serialize to like a string or something like that, you do still have that type safety if you're referring to like a third-party object, like a singleton, in that kind of router structure, right? So you don't necessarily lose full type safety, right? Sorry,
right.
I just wanted to clarify that point.
Simon, you're absolutely right, and that's actually like a pretty advanced feature, or I guess a pretty advanced outside of the navigation library concept that you do have to have additional developer knowledge in order to utilize. But that's why, it's like somewhat manual, like how you manage the types. That's all up to you. What is good, though, is you aren't locked into that serialization. So you can actually just pass whatever data you want. You can pass entire objects. You can pass the state of a page, between different pages. And I think that's what's so wonderful about Flutter. One of the things that's so wonderful about Flutter. So that also presents some API issues, though. And that's like one thing I wanted to talk about, perhaps mention a little bit later, is like some of the API design issues and why the library still isn't like a V1, and what it would take to get to V1. But sorry, Matthew, I want to get to your number two.
No, go for it.
Your question.
This is all good stuff. This is all good stuff, Ray. Keep going.
Okay. So part of the API design issue, and Matthew's question was, does navigation util support tab navigation? So yes, but not in perhaps a way you would expect. So to clarify, to me, I think there's a difference between tab navigation and nested navigation. Tab navigation is a subset of perhaps nested navigation. And tabs, you can have two types of tab navigation. So one is where the tab changes don't reflect in the navigation scheme at all. So it's not persistent. It's not stored in the navigation state. And this is, you can use this for like tabs on just a page that you don't care about if the Android activity is destroyed and you have to restart the user at that page. So that's one type of navigation, tab navigation. Another type of tab navigation is if you want to display the tab selection and persist it inside of the URL as a query parameter. So if you look at web navigation, and the web the different types of web navigation schemes, you see that a lot of times they save the tabs. When you click on a different tab, it's saved as a query parameter. So that's another way. However, that's also a sort of a nuanced state system where you can restore and navigate directly to a tab via the query parameter. However, that's different from if you're storing the tab as a nested route. Okay, so now we're getting into sort of more of the nested navigation. So if you are talking about tabs as the root bottom tabs, right? So this might be, what people are thinking about, like the bottom tab structure when they're talking about tab navigation. Yep. Each page, page home, settings, and then the middle, like contacts or whatever, you have 3 tabs, 4 tabs at the bottom. Each one of these is now actually a page. And the way you would represent it in the URL structure is it would be a slash like home slash settings. So these are now actual pages, however, represented as a main tab structure.
Okay.
So the API for how to support this, that's something that I have a prototype beta for. It works. It fully works, and it's somewhat recursive. You just do the same thing that you do for the main navigation, but you just declare the tabs inside of the tab page. So you have a tab page that holds your 3 tabs, right? And you would declare the 3 tabs as a list of routes inside that page, the same as you would declare the list of routes for all of the other pages inside of your app. However, that creates some API issues, and the usability. I still have to get feedback on how usable people find it. I personally find it somewhat usable. I'd rate it at like perhaps 70 to 80%. But why is it done like this? The reason why it's done like that is to avoid algorithmic and to avoid any type of computation. So once you create a tab navigation, and if you have nested tabbed routes and nested tabbed pages, a lot of what other navigation packages do, like GoRouter and I'll just mention GoRouter, is they don't handle it very well. They have shell routes, and what they do is they have like branching trees. So now whenever you switch a tab, what you're doing is you're actually traveling from one tree to another branch of the tree. And that requires quite a bit of state and quite a bit of algorithms in order to compute, back and forth navigation, route matching, to determine if pages are equal or not equal to track 2 unequal pages on 2 different branches. And now you just turn it into a computer science problem, which is great if you have a computer science degree and you want to solve these problems theoretically, but perhaps not so great when you're actually wanting to not solve computer science problems all day and actually build an app. So the way in navigation utils I do it is it's actually just a single list of routes. Whenever you have nested tab routes, there's no computation at all. It's a single list. It gets merged into your main route list. So you can think of it like all your tab A's, tab A, and all the routes in your tab A, B, C, D, all of that, A.1, A.2. That's all just in the main list. And whenever you switch tabs, we just rearrange the list. So now there's no branching at all.
Because there is a big problem in terms of hierarchical navigation like this, where you get infinite cycles, right? You keep pushing. I mean, you keep pushing, you get this like stack that ever increases that you never go back on. So one of the ideas of having that top level navigation, a lot of apps is so that when you change that top to different top level navigation, what you're essentially doing is resetting the stack, right? You're resetting the when you hit back, you expect still to leave the app because you're at that top level. Whereas if you hit back on a sub screen or somewhere else deeper into your app, you expect to go back to the previous screen to return. I think there's I like the idea of like rearranging. So if you're saying, so like if I've got 4 tabs, tab 1, 2, 3, 4. If I'm on tab 1, I go to tab 4, and now I go back to 1. Essentially, what you're doing is taking the history of the 1 entry and moving it forward to the top of the stack, right?
Exactly.
So the person hits back, they go back to tab 4. Yeah.
Right.
There's also obviously the question, obviously nested navigation about having a stack of navigation per tab or something like that as well, which is separate hierarchy, I'm assuming.
No, it's all in the same list. So it's in the same hierarchy, but we just we add a little bit of metadata. So there's something called tab groups, and you need to control this yourself. So this is all up to you. You have the power, and you can use it however you want. But you can annotate nested tab routes with a group key, and then the navigation library will group all of those together. So that's how we handle that to give you the control, because I actually had to build with codelessly and then another app as well where the tab behavior was completely different. Sometimes, in some apps, you want to track the tab history. Like social media apps, like it's very convenient where you press back, you want to go back to the previous tab you were on. For another app, for example, say like a banking app, if you go back, like sometimes your home screen might not be, the first tab always. It saves which tab you're on. So if you press back, you want to actually exit the app. And to support both of those, we don't want to, recreate the entire navigation system or introduce new concepts. We just give you the tools to configure the navigation stack how you want.
Question for you: with navigation utils, is that the state for the navigation, is that stored in the singleton, global singleton, or is that stored in the against the actual router config instance that you build and pass to Material app?
It was yes and no. So there's a navigation manager singleton. And I apologize. Whenever you ask any questions, because navigation is so complex, there's always additional information. So I can answer at surface level, yes, but the answer is actually yes.
I only asked because interesting in Flutter, you have router as a widget, right? Most people don't know this. There's actually a router widget which allows you to pass another router config to, and that's how you can do that sub navigation, right? So you can actually have a separate navigation stack for different parts of UI using the router widget, and it was designed for that purpose in mind. And it kind of manages, the idea is it manages that connection between the two routers automatically. However, a lot of people don't know this or don't use it, and I'm just like kind of interested if there wasn't a top level singleton, then you could potentially use that router widget to actually manage that, right?
You can, and that requires a lot more testing, though. And I think it's highly specific to the type that app you're building. My experience there so far is, and this is a concrete example of an actual problem where I had to have multiple routers, because for perhaps like 95%, 98%, you don't have to have multiple routers. Like you can just manage it in one and simulate the nested navigation stack. The one instance in where I had to have multiple routers was when I needed to create a global overlay music player. So the music player navigation stack, back reactivity to back buttons and interactions on the music player level needs to be in an overlay state that's completely separate from your main app, which is like the list of the music tracks. So in that case, having two routers actually worked really, really well. And I had to do that in order to, when you create things in an overlay, you have to provide it with a separate router if you want to support pop-ups, navigation, and essentially access to the parent router widget. So that was the hard limitation there.
Hey Ray, have you had Gemini 2.5 Pro review your code base yet?
No, I haven't.
Please let me read the good parts because it's actually really good. So this is I just ran Gemini CLI and ran it over your entire code base, and my standard prompt for this is give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I get 3 paragraphs out of here, but the good's actually pretty good. Clear purpose and value proposition. Let's read the headlines. Excellent documentation, robust example projects, solid project structure, feature rich, no external dependencies. So it really likes all those. So the only ugly thing.
Let's make sure we never have another guest on the show again and just read off the ugly. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh yeah, well, but it's great because it gave me a good sense of being willing to jump into this code. I mean, I like the fact that it says documentation is excellent, so I know I'm not going to have to be coming back and asking you questions. The only ugly thing is I couldn't figure out why you have Go router migration stuff. Because like, is this supposed to be a parallel to Go router, or is this supposed to be a subset of Go router? So it was kind of curious about that. So it's the only thing that's not answered in the documentation so far, according to it. So anyway, but yeah, no, great review. It's a great review.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to say that the other thing that I'd say would turn people off on Pub will be that it's an unverified uploader, right? So you need to set up a verified domain against your package.
Could be anybody.
Wow.
How do we know it's really Ray then? How do we know it's really this guy?
Ray, I work for a very, I don't want to say who I work for on stream. Let me just say uptight institution who, if I put in unverified uploader and I got caught, would be very unhappy with me. So whatever work you have to go through, and I'm not sure what it is, to be honest, to get that verified. Okay, whatever you got to do to get that verified badge on there, totally worth it, because I promise you that SecOps cares. So that would be my suggestion there. That would be the thing that would stop me from being able to use it in my day job. Side gigs, yeah, no problem. But it would stop me. Now, I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, but I have like all of these routing edge cases that I've run into in my life. And it's like, can we pepper Ray with like this edge case and see how he responds?
Ray's like, I took too much on, please.
Yeah, and I saw there were some other questions in.
We'll get. Well. Let's get to some questions in the chat. If there's anything
that's
around
fair. That's fair. Let's do that.
I think the most recent one is probably the one that people are asking. What's in the 1.0 release then? When will you be calling this 1.0?
The 1.0, I'm saving it because I need to get this feedback, which this conversation really helps with. I need the feedback on the API because right now everything is set up to where it makes sense for me. And it's set up to what I consider to be some good API practices. However, what I'm seeing as I'm adding these advanced features is that when you add advanced features, you add them, at least based on what I've learned building this package, is you need to add them in a way where it's configurable. And that means that you give other users and power users the ability to express their intent through your package. So you give them the API surface and you expose that surface, but then you have to walk it back and you have to think about the 95% use case. What do you prescribe to people? And I don't have that prescription yet. Because I don't have that user feedback and that advanced level of user feedback. So that's what I'm waiting for.
And that's great. I honestly, that's definitely what you need to do. You need to be going 0.945 up to 200 until you get to that refined enough to that, I'm just saying that don't get to version 1 prematurely, right? Like, I think what you need to do right now is hopefully what our viewers are going to do is go try it out, give you that feedback, or even try out their scenarios and their situations, so that you get to understand what that 95, 80% use cases and make sure you're fitting that requirement. However, I will say that from my personal experience building SDKs and APIs and such like, there's a real difference in adding every feature under the sun. Obviously, like you don't want to be doing that, right? Because now you've got a lot of API surface area to maintain, right? What the better thing to do in any package or in any SDK is to reveal as you said, configurability, but more about like allowing the end developer to override behavior, and they can implement their own. So this is like, if you've got one component accessing another component, have it so that can be passed in from one to the other, and then can be configured and overridden. And if they want to go change something, they can then just do it themselves, right? Instead of having to say, I need this feature from you, and to have it in the package so they can utilize that in their project. With me, if they can just make the changes themselves and do it themselves, they'll do that, right? And it's not your problem then to maintain that code and to deal with that the problems around that, right? The bugs around that. So I think it's more about thinking about those use cases, which is what is the API surface area that can be generified and kind of exposed in some way that can be overridden. And that way you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get this idea that you don't have to satisfy everyone's feature requests because they can go do it themselves. And the answer to a lot of those requests that come in is like, just override this thing and you can do it yourself, right? Rather than I'm going to go implement that. What is your PR? Can we get that in there? Can we add all those features and functionality? And those things can then be delivered as examples, right, to the code base rather than actually as features. And it also means that if you have third-party developers that want to enhance the behavior, they can release their own packages that implement that interface. And now you can say, I'll use navigation utils and navigation utils multi-stack or whatever it is, in conjunction with each other in my package to give me both those feature sets. And you haven't had to maintain the multi-stack thing or whatever it might be, right? Does that kind of make sense?
That'd be mimicking what they've already done with the Navigator 2 stack, which is that it's all pluggable, which allows us to have things like raise package and go router and things like that, because it is all pluggable. And there's almost always there's a number of patterns about being able to make something pluggable in terms of having a default thing that falls through, but also a way to override that at some level in the process, maybe by subclassing.
And this is the thing, right? Like working out what that determination is the hard bit, right? But I think it, and that, I mean, I only have my experience to back onto, right? It's like about choosing what is something that you put into code when you're running the code versus what is like a configuration parameter versus what is this versus what is that. It can get pretty bizarre and wild, but I think the key is that's the way to solve a lot of those feature requests, which is to make it accessible so someone can implement the feature that they want rather than you having to do it for them, right, and maintain it.
We have one other routing question here. Let's get this one out of the way. Is it possible to have two panes that have different navigation stacks?
That's a great question. I've thought about that quite a bit, as like you often do have these multi-pane navigations layouts. For example, Superlist, to mention a popular Flutter supporter. So their app is a note-taking app, and they have essentially like an infinite number of panes where you can add additional nested notes that appear as a pane. And when you navigate back, you just close one and you can go between different things. So that's pretty common. And then you have Flutter's navigation rail, right? So I actually did a deep dive into that and talked with the author of it. Unfortunately, it's now been deprecated. But navigation rail, it was supposed to integrate with shell route and support these pane navigation scenarios. However, when you actually try to use it and what Flutter prescribes, what Flutter recommends with their Go router, with their stateful shell routes, you run into quite a few navigation issues. So I've thought about this issue quite a bit. I don't have a prescription yet, you can implement it. And I might, add an example sometimes for my beta nested navigation, because this is, I think, a slight variant of the nested navigation. Not completely, because you do have everything appearing on the screen at once, right? So it is a little bit, there is some like focus, there's some just page state that you might need to interact with, mixed with the actual navigation state itself. So still an open question. I don't have the answer for you. And going off of what Simon said earlier, I think that was really helpful, Simon. You actually helped me see that I'm thinking about things in the wrong way. I shouldn't be trying to expand the API surface to cover, everything and solve the problems for everyone, solve every problem. I should be actually decreasing my API surface and getting out of your way and letting you solve the problem with the built-in Flutter navigation system, with your built-in knowledge. So that way you don't have to know how to solve things via the navigation utils way. You can just solve things via your knowledge of the Flutter way. And that's one of the core philosophies of the package. And you really helped me, shift my thinking there. So that's, I think, you did tremendous work in getting V1 unblocked.
I was gonna say, like, a good example of that is like the deep linking feature. You can have that as a primary feature. You can also bring that off into a package, right? And then provide the features that someone can do deep linking however they want, right? Like, you give them the interface so that it links in and they can request maybe, a set of pages to be added to the stack or whatever it is. Then you've got your implementation of your deep linking to actually do that, and that's your default, and that can be referenced. But now they can override that deep linking behavior inside your implementation with whatever they want. So if they've got a problem with the way you handle deep links, who cares? They can just do whatever they want. And I think that's the difference, right? That kind of, does that kind of make sense? Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that feedback's tremendous. I need to, be better about doing that, adopting that philosophy. So thank you so much.
Right. So we've got some other questions in the queue, and we'll just so feel free to keep asking navigation questions. Ray, feel free to stick around. Like I'm not pushing you away or anything. Like, this is just an open community sort of chat. So we're going to be here for another hour. So it's completely up to you. Like how long you want to stick around for. But we'll start getting some more general questions, and we're going to do some live coding. I may try and implement the navigation utils package. I was just thinking inside.
Oh, that would be fun. So we have this nav question also in Flutter. How can I show different root pages based on an app state and switch between them with something like change app state in inside my app?
That's just navigate, right?
Yeah, that's just nav.
So different root pages. I mean, like, so first of all, obviously, there's like any sort of navigation is just setting you. This isn't really enough information in this question to really answer this particularly, right? So root page here being, do you mean your initial page, right? And if you mean your initial page, then that's obviously determined by how the app is loaded or how it started. You can also store the last page that you're on and call that your root page. And as we were saying, as Ray was saying, if you had like 5 tabs and you left the app on tab 3 and you want the app to return to tab 3, then your initial page is tab 3, right? And that's about you storing your state and restoring your app state before the navigator gets loaded up, and then you can tell it, here's your initial route, here's your starting route. But that stops the kind of screen from going from the home screen to then navigating to like tab 3 or something, right? But yeah, you could obviously do this. It's just we don't really have enough information probably to give you a good direction, I think. Does that? Anyone else want to add to that?
Well, he expanded.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, it's a generic way to pass.
But I guess why would you pass it around if you're using state management?
Yeah, you don't have to pass it to their pages. So your state, you're lifting your state up. So any global app state should exist above all your pages, above your navigator, above your material app, right? In your tree, in your like Flutter tree. You can also just have a singleton. You can literally just have, I can show you in a minute an example. You can literally just have a class which has a single instance that has some variables. That's your app state. It's like, if you want to do that, you can. Not saying it should be the appropriate way of doing it, but you can, right? So I think, yeah, so you've got app state, that's your global state, but also you've got specific state. I'll give an example. In one of the apps that we've been working on, the Journal app, the Journal Club app, is that when you load a screen, it loads an episode, right? There's an episode content screen, right? Now, what you could do is pass an episode model, which contains the content to display on that screen to the screen itself, right? So that is the current state, right? That is the state that you want that page to use, right? In which case, you're just passing an object. So in Navigator 1, or the normal sort of Flutter navigation way, you've got non-named routes and named routes. And named routes, you can pass an argument, and that argument can be your object, your model object. And in your non-named routes, where you're just doing your own route, in which case you can just pass an argument to that as well. It's just a variable that you put inside your page. And once your widget loads up for your page, you can do modal route.of context and actually retrieve the current route parameters and settings. But I think if you look at the navigation utils pub page that we were just talking about, there's examples on there on how you pass arguments. We talked about it earlier. I don't want to go back to it right now, but you can talk about how you pass arguments to a route, and that's how you would pass in your state to a route that you wanted to use. We did mention this earlier, but you don't have to pass your state. So as I mentioned with the idea of passing an episode to an episode display screen, which like lists the content of an episode, you don't have to pass the entire model that contains the information to the route. Instead, you can pass whatever reference you want to that, and then that data can be stored outside in your app state, right? So that's normally what a lot of apps do, but they have a repository pattern, which is basically, here's my repository of cached episodes, for example, and then when you load the new screen, that new screen then goes off to the repository and says, give me the episode for this ID, for this reference. And that way, this means that you can deep link into that stuff because you're just passing the short reference, the ID or whatever in the URL or in the named argument of your route. I think it covers kind of most of that. Anyone else? Deep one there.
Pretty much nailed it, I think. All right.
I did.
So that's all the routing.
I've done like 4 talks on navigation, I think.
Well, it's tricky because it's something that's not quite like the way we did it from the web. So you have to figure out how this all actually works.
It's quite funny because you don't need to use any of that navigation stuff yourself. If you wanted to, you can just literally. I said to someone the other day, you just put stack in your app, do set state, change your state, and then change which widgets you show in your stack. I mean, that's literally how Navigator effectively works, right? Use an overlay with overlay entries, but the point still remains is basically the same thing, right?
Okay, so we have some questions that are not related directly to routing, but I'll go ahead and start those if that's okay.
Go for it.
Okay, how do we do an offline support? I'm supposed to try to pronounce Valky, I guess, so it's in the transcript. How can we do an offline support app and responsiveness in an easy way, practicing for Google requirements? Give tips. What do Flutter community people prefer, package way or manual media query way? This is an interesting topic that brings in a lot of people.
There's so much in here to unpack, first of all, right? So let's be clear. There's 2 separate things, offline and responsive. Like, how do you do this in an easy way? There's no easy way. There you go. That's your first answer, right? I think, like, I've seen there's a couple of packages. I'm trying to remember what they're called now. That really misuse these things. Like, there's one that has like a global kind of. What's it called?
The screen, the screen responsive one.
Screen something, isn't it? I can't recall.
Yeah,
responsive screen, something like that. It's a terrible idea. Basically, the idea is it has like this global synchronous approach where anytime you display something, you go, screen layout, this number of dips or something. It does some weird fractional calculations to change the size of everything for you. And the idea is that you build all your layouts with this thing, and it magically handles it until it doesn't, and then you're effed. I think let's. Do you guys want to have anything to mention about responsiveness? How you guys do responsiveness in apps?
It's bad. Layout builder. If we're being honest, layout builder. That's all I got.
So
layout builder, definitely.
So I think like there's a case of it really does vary, right? Because there's times when you want to change the way that your app is. So first of all, responsiveness is about changing that way your app is displayed based on the available screen real estate. That's the basic premise of responsiveness, right? On a browser-based responsive, that is normally based on breakpoints, right? So you have media queries inside CSS and blah blah blah. But the idea being that as your browser window changes, it will then use a different set of CSS styles to change the way your page works and looks, right?
Yeah.
And then you can also so there is actually a breakpoints package. I think Rody made it, right? Which basically does a similar thing, right? You can have set up your breakpoints, and then you can have like a builder, which you have like, oh, when it's on a phone, it does this thing. When it's on a tablet, do this thing. When it's on a large tablet, do this thing. When it's on desktop, do that thing, right? Like you can do all that. But there's not many places where you actually just want to completely change your entire widget tree or approach to how you do something based on the device it's running on. It's more like, oh, I want to change the padding, or I want to change the font size, or I want to like limit how many items I see in the list horizontally versus one thing or the other. And it's a lot of those kind of use cases, in which case it ends up being something that you can lift out and have as a helper to your current context. So having something like is tablet, right, which ends up being something like media queries, size of whatever, and like work out, is it above 700 dips, then it's a tablet, right? Like that kind of thing, which is something that doesn't require any package. It's like a simple one-liner, right?
And that's generally what I go for, to be completely honest with you. My problem with breakpoints is that there's so many different devices out there, and there's such a diversity of devices. Like suddenly you've got a tablet layout on somebody's phone because it just barely crossed that, like, and particularly foldables, that's a problem now, right? Yeah. There isn't a really great way of doing it. My general approach is we identify a target device that we want to be like our gold standard, and then we just try to make it not look like garbage everywhere else. And I don't advocate that, but if you're a small developer team, I feel like that's like the best you can probably hope for.
There's also a notion, just to say, that when you're building your layouts on Flutter, there's responsiveness in two ways. One is based on, as I just said, about the media query, right? So that is like, what device am I running on, and the aspects of that device, its ratio, its size, whatever. But the other one is about what is the real estate given to my widget, and that's where layout builder comes in. So that is saying that, oh, here's the space that I've been given. My widgets are always, I want to be at least 200 wide. How many can I fit on my screen? Okay, I'm going to do a row of 3, right? Like this is where it comes down to your precise layout requirements. I mean, to be honest, like you've got two approaches to a lot of this, which is you've got design, you're doing more corporate, you've got design team, and they've actually given you, here's the spec I want on large tablet, here's the spec I want on a small tablet, which is wonderful. And then you just make it do that. Done. Right. Whereas if you haven't got this kind of design requirement, then it kind of ends up being more like, I'm going to run it on all these different emulated devices and see how it looks and try and make it look nice on all of them for the most part. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think there's an aspect of don't overdo it. Right. That's the other thing. Right. Like you can look at how many people are using your app on tablet and then support tablet better. Right. Like, or to a lesser or greater degree, support tablet, but maybe make more features in tablet or make it better specifically for tablet when you know that you've got an audience that are using it on tablet.
The other thing is to be familiar with everything in the layouts section of the Flutter guide, because there's a lot of layout widgets, way more than most people ever talk about. Like the first time I found, is it wrap? Yeah, wrap. I went, oh my God, that could have solved so many of the problems that I had if I just known it was there. Wrap is wonderful. Fills as many little boxes across as it can, and it goes on to the next line. It's great.
I'd tell you one that's a secret widget that most people don't use proper, but to an effective degree, Align. Believe it or not, Align has some really big tricks up its sleeve. Changing the height factor and width factor has some surprising things if you're wrapping a line inside another line, for example. Like there's some interesting things that you can do. Yeah. So
review those layout widgets from time to time.
Limited box, size box, constrained box, everything box.
Fractionally sized box.
Fraction size box. Fractional size box is another one that most people don't use enough.
Yeah.
To touch on something you said earlier, Simon, though, is like I think looking at your analytics is massively underrated for like determining what devices people are using. So we had like this big thing of like, let's make it look good on tablets at work. And then we looked at our analytics and it was like one person who was using a tablet, and it wasn't even an iPad. It was like a Samsung school tablet that was like, you know, used for education. It was like this weird offbeat thing. We have no idea how it even got on there. So, you know.
Well, they won't be downloading and sideloading APKs for much longer.
Right, right.
When you recognize that one person, you should say, "Welcome back, Jeremy." That'd be really spooky.
Try and find out which person is this. Right. Yeah. Jeremy, we're no longer going to be supporting tablets for you. You need to change your device.
Please quit using your kid's tablet for banking.
There's a link to Amazon to buy some new tablets.
Oh gosh.
Okay. Next one, I guess. Let's see here.
There's a constraints transform box.
Oh,
I've never even seen that widget before.
Wait. Oh my God. They keep adding new widgets. My goodness. That home team in Mountain View, they're just getting a little crazy. They're just getting like
container widget that applies an arbitrary transform to its constraints and sizes children using the resulting box constraints.
Wow, like a super fractionally sized box.
No, but this is when was this added?
Let's play with this in the live coding. We need to still get a live coding. So that sounds like fun. All right. Okay, so we move on to the next question here. Okay, so Bhavesh, I probably mispronounced that. Geolocator takes a significant time to retrieve location. Any way to improve speed with decent accuracy? There's your problem. It's two opposite constraints. If you want it quickly, it's got to be loose. If you want it accurate, it's got to be later. So there's no way around that. You cannot change the laws of physics.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's nothing to do with the package. There's nothing to do here with the problem you've got is that to get an accurate location, it takes time for it to get all the satellites it needs and accurate measurements from those satellites over a period of time to give you that better location, right? What you can do, though, in software, there's a trick to this, which is start listening to that stream early on as your app starts up, and it can constantly listen to the location in a slow incremental update. So you don't need it like every few milliseconds. You could be getting it at once a minute whilst the app is being used or whatever, at the high accuracy. And what happens when the user then does something that requires the location, but boom, you've already got it there as a high accuracy. So that's the trick. You're not asking for location when the user does something that needs it. You're already getting it beforehand, and that way you're starting this 30-second delay ahead of time. That's always a trick that's been used for a long time. One of the ones that I always like to go back to on this one was the reason why Instagram became really popular. And I know that was it, as I've said this one before. But this is so everyone, when Instagram, with all this kind of notion of like having social media photo uploading and like sharing your what you're doing around you with photos, when that kind of was a whole thing, there's lots of apps that were doing that. Like Instagram was not like the winner one, right? Like there was lots. But what they did was you took your picture, you then started putting all your metadata in, like title, description, tags, whatever else, and then you hit like submit or upload or whatever, and then you get a progress. I'm uploading it. Now all the apps did that. However, what Instagram did, as soon as you took the picture, it's starting uploading it in the background. And then as the user's typing out their name and description and their tags, the time they've actually got to press the upload button, the send button, it's already uploaded. So to everyone's eyes, Instagram was like so much faster and better than everything else. It did exactly the same thing. It just did it ahead of time. And from the user experience aspect, it was just revolutionary. But for the most part, it was just simple. And it's that kind of thing that you can think about, right? Rather than delaying your user, see if you can get the information ahead of time and work your state a certain way.
The challenge with that is depending on depending on what you're using that location for, you might have to ask for permissions. And so if the person doesn't understand why they need to give permissions yet, then that becomes sticky. But
so the way a lot of, obviously you can do the thing where you display a
soft prompt.
Soft prompt to the user, which is like, we're going to request your location, so when we need it, we've got it, or whatever reason you're doing. I don't know what your app is. It may be kind of obvious if it's like a social media app where we to like checking out like hotels or I don't know, restaurants or some crap. Then it makes sense.
I just want one social media app that's honest about why they're requesting location permissions. Like Facebook is requesting your location so we can sell it to advertisers. Hit yes.
Cool. All right, we have one last question, and then if you want to do some live coding with, as long as Ray is sticking around, maybe do some live coding with the routing package.
Sure.
That'd be cool. All right, let's do this question here. Do you know any Flutter package you'd recommend for rendering AI responses? I presume that's the Markdown stuff that comes back. Yeah, Markdown, Mermaid, Plant UML.
The Markdown package.
The Markdown package does a lot of that. So that's probably, and that's what people are using. If you look at, there are a couple of core Flutter AI packages in the pub, and if you look at what they're using for their example programs, I think there's like a standard Markdown package that they use for those things.
Yeah, Markdown has got like 2 million downloads compared to the next thing on pub you find is like 25,000. So
right, if you find something that it doesn't do, submit an issue or a patch.
So the Markdown package is actually owned by the Dart dev team. So
yes, yep.
I don't know if this will do what you want or not, but you might also want to look at the Flutter AI toolkit. There was some buzz about this at FlutterCon NYC, so you might want to take a peek at it.
If you're trying to display graphics, like Plant UML or Mermaid, it looks like you are. I think that's dubious, right? Because that's a whole different problem set, right? Like how big is this graph? How are you going to display it on the screen? Do you want it to it's easy browsable? Like this is more now looking at sort of like this sort of node graph viewer. In fact, we built something like that in a previous few episodes ago. And I think that's the kind of thing you probably want to look at there, which is you could ask the AI to return it back in a format that you've asked for, and then and then you can interpret that text coming back into whatever widgets you want to display on the screen. You could you could look at like having building a renderer for Plant UML or Mermaid, or if there isn't one, using one if there is one, great. But it's normally going to give you like a huge set of options that you now need to implement, all the different various arrows, all the different thicknesses of lines, all the different this, all the different that. That's probably what your app. It's probably not what your app needs. So you're probably just going to overblow your app with all these options and possibilities that you're not trying to display to your user. So I would go down the route of start getting the AI to generate you specifics, like a little graph connection syntax that you can describe with DSL. And then you can just like regex that out and pass it and display those widgets on the screen in a really simple way, right? And there's plenty of graph like widget display libraries out there that you can kind of use.
Yep. Cool. Okay, so that
Ray,
was
Ray, by the way, I know you're here. If you want to like jump in on any questions that come up, or feel free just to give your remarks if you want. I'm not gonna.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we only have one thing left from the audience, which is this widget review, and then also if we want to build some live coding with Ray's package, that would be cool too.
I actually need to take this moment to hop off, guys. I've got a 1:30 meeting, so I need to get some stuff together for that. So sorry about that. Ray, it was such a pleasure meeting you. I don't know if you're going to be at FlutterCon Europe. If you are, I would love to drop by and say hey. Otherwise, I will see you guys around.
Yeah, good meeting you, John.
Bye, everyone.
Cool. And then there were 4.
and then there are 4. Let's see if I can get this code up here. Hang on.
Draggable swipe wrapper widget review. That's a mouthful.
That's not right.
Probably missing 2 or 3.
Wrapper to swipe a widget left or right.
Isn't that swipeable? Don't we already have that?
No, I know what this is. This is more like, I think this is more like what are the? I think it's more like maybe the Tinder card kind of thing, you know.
Oh,
look. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm just taking a quick look at. Let's bring it up on stream here and see what we've got there with.
I'm going to also stop taking questions because unless it's about the live cutting. So I'm going to.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, taking down the ticker.
Oh, crap!
It gives us a little more room on the screen too.
We're happy to take questions about the live coding or things that were up on the stream at the time, but general questions are basically at an end now. Right, let's see. What can I do? Share.
Share and share alike. Let me get rid of
this.
Here.
Right, let's do this.
Yes.
So is that big enough for people?
Right.
So we have a draggable swipe wrapper. I don't know why. I used to like this with the variables first because from Java and other languages, but since I've been Dartified, like I always expect the
constructors first. Yeah.
Which is the default Dart syntax, right?
It'll also be interesting when we get primary constructors too, because that's going to make those two things one thing, which is going to be great.
Okay, so it's state, it has a single ticket provider, mix it has an animation controller. We have should trigger left, should trigger right. Okay, and drag offset and controller. We initialize our controller, it starts up. So we pass in a duration, a default duration of 300. And this always has me upset. You're rebooting the entire widget every single time this controller changes. I mean, what is it about I mean, maybe that makes sense in this widget. I'm not going to lie about that. But normally the case is that there's a lot of stuff in here that probably doesn't need to change when that changes. In which case, you know, current drag offset was the thing that's actually changing in there, right? So that's okay. So we've got a transform translate. So you could wrap this transform translate. Oh, sorry. Is it? Yeah. You could wrap this transform translate in a value listenable builder, and have it take the offset directly in as the parameter, which means that this gesture detector is not going to get rebuilt unnecessarily, right? You're changing the opacity at this level with this build swipe icon. Well, first of all, build swipe icon. Why do we have functions returning widgets? Why don't we have proper widgets? Why is this not a widget, right? And then if you're animating opacity like this, which you are, this is the wrong way to do this, right? Because now what you're doing is on every drag, every time the drag changes, you're rebuilding all the widgets, you're rebuilding that opacity. What you actually probably want is you could do an animated opacity on both of these. So this current drag offset, what do we have here? It's kind of interesting, right? So this is just the X value in the controller, right? This is just not needed, right? You can actually base it off of the X value of the controller directly. So if I go down here, this means that these two here are the X value of the value of the controller divided by max drag distance, which is a parameter for the widget. That means both of these two parameters for opacity can actually completely be tweens and animations themselves. So that means they will rebuild as required, like state management. They will rebuild as required. You're not rebuilding everything. And if you do that right, then this becomes a fade. The bottom opacity here becomes a fade. Is it fade transition? Where you pass it your animation parameter instead of the opacity double. Slightly optimizes it out. So we got so build swipe icon center left. So you got two icons. A translate on the child. I'm kind of interested. Should we run this and see what it's like? You got spring simulation, start snapback animation. So what are we actually doing here? Let's look at this logic, because this is where all the magic happens. So if it's 0, execute swipe callback. Okay, so basically you're saying that. Okay, so here's another thing. You're saying that if the controller is at 0, it should go back as an add list. Well, its default value is 0. So if somehow the controller's add list gets called, where the state's still at 0, you tell it it's going to swipe back. The change of the animation corner should not be the thing that executes the swipe back gesture, right? Like you should base that off the velocity of the actual user interaction, not the result of the animation controller change. Yeah, and execute swipe if should trigger left, then trigger left. If should trigger right, trigger right. This again, just have a trigger left and trigger right. I'm not sure why we would need flags. Let's see what we're doing here further down. So what you've done is you've got a gesture. So I'm going to switch back down here. So we've got a gesture detector with pan update and pan end. So the idea being that when you move your finger left and right, it runs this function. When you let go, it runs this function. So let's go see what happens on those two use cases. Let's do that. So when you swipe, we get the delta. Is swipe allowed? Okay, so this is where you're choosing if they're going left or if they're going right based on the delta positive or negative. I mean, if you've dragged it to the left and then you let go, but then I start dragging it to the right before I let go, you're going to assume that they're going right instead of left. It seems like it might be very touchy. Again, normally what you do is you use what's called a velocity tracker, and then you put all of your deltas into the velocity tracker, and then it tells you if it's a positive velocity, negative velocity overall. You know that they're going in. There's actually a class called velocity tracker for that. Apply drag resistance. Okay, so we've got we're integrating a resistance factor over time, but on the delta. So the max is actually multiplied by 1.5. So it's not the max. It's 3 times the max. No, 1.5 times the max, sorry. Okay, so is actually set to the current drag offset, and then swipe threshold. Pan end. So start snapback animation. They are based on your velocity at the end. So Henry, where's your applied drag? So being called down here. Are you even being used? Oh, okay. So if you're panning and you're allowed to swipe one way or the other, then you do a set state. Again, like this shouldn't be needed. You could apply apply the value instead of applying the value change to drag offset. Change the animation controller value, and we could have a tweak if we'll get. Well, I think we'll jump up to navigate. I mean, there's some feedback there. We could definitely take a look at this and maybe tweak it and show how we can make it a little bit better. This is good though, right? I mean, in terms of like you know, this, I can see a lot of thought has gone into this and a lot of work. I think like these magical booleans have a bad code smell to them, right? Like it's more about like your code execution, how you're appropriately doing that. So
the Gemini review I just did of this, I think explains that set state thing a little bit more directly. Let me read what it's got here, and you can confirm that or not. Calling the set state call inside the add listener is likely causing more rebuilds than necessary. As the animation controller's value changes, Flutter will automatically rebuild the animated builder, or in this case, the transform translate widget that it uses it. So manually calling set state is redundant and can hurt performance. That's what you were trying to say earlier, right?
Yeah, but he doesn't have a transform translate, right? Like that's what I'm saying. He should, and then that would solve that, right?
Okay.
The transform translate doesn't automatically get rebuilt, right? Like, but it could be.
Okay. Yeah. I just dropped it into Gemini 2.5. Actually, it was 2.5 Flash even, so it wasn't even like the cool model. It was the fast model. So good, really good reviews. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like you know the whole thing is pretty great, right? So you're taking wherever you are right now, going to 0. So this is your snapback. So when you let go, it does this. You need to make sure that your interaction with the gesture detector supports on-pan cancel and cancels the user interaction. So that's when something else in the gesture arena overrides it. The focus can change. So make sure you handle the cancel event as well. And that way, if there is any problem, basically the idea of cancel is instead of doing whatever end does, it resets it, right? So if end is snapping back with an animation, what you actually expect it to do is just set the current to 0 in that case, right? Which basically puts it back to how it was. You've canceled the interaction the user had. And there's what else was I thinking?
Canceling for a swipe would be
also the animation you're doing animate with, but you need to cancel that animation, right? You need to have ways of you know, I know you have the dispose when the widget goes away, but if the user starts interacting whilst it's animating, they should be able to do that, right? They should be able to start at that point and carry on with this. Let's say they swipe and it springs back and then they swipe again. And the way you've got this set up right now is it will try and do the animation and move the widget at the same time, right? It's going to be pretty funky. So you want to make sure that in your initial down event, so have a on pan, have a pan. You'll have there's a pan up. There's also pan down. On pan down, it should cancel the animation controller, right? Which will stop the animation at its current point and stop applying like the new X position. But at the moment, the animation controller and the X position are not synced, right? Changing the animation controller sets the X position, but it itself is not the state of the X position. So you may want to just consolidate that, right? There's no reason why you can't just generate this offset widget with the X position when you access the animation controller. Like it's a small data object. It's not a big deal. All right, so that's I think that's enough of code review for the minute. This was the widget I was talking about earlier, by the way. Have you guys seen this before? Constraints transform box. So apply arbitrary transform to its constraints. There's several times I've actually wanted to do this, so I'm kind of like, this actually kind of solves some problems. And size of children using the resulting box constraints, optionally clipping or treating the overflow as an error. The container sizes its child with using a box constraint created by applying constraint transform to its own constraints and the container will attempt to adopt the same size with the limits of its own constraints. If it ends up with a different size, it will align the child based on the alignment. If the container cannot expand enough to accommodate the entire child, the child will be clipped with the clip behavior. What's really interesting about this is when I looked at this, I was like, hang on a minute, what? So if you look at this, constraints transform, make max height unconstrained. There's a few times I've wanted that kind of like, response to something, and I'm able to just dump that in there. That's really helpful and really interesting. I've not noticed this widget before. But what's interesting about this is that that parameter, the box constraints transform, is a function. So it gives you the constraints that the parent was given, and you return whatever constraints you want. What's interesting about that is it means that you're not limited to a subset of whatever. This maybe comes back to your Ray, that API thing we were talking about earlier, right? And what they've done here is they've given us an API, which is, here's a function you can apply however you want the transforms. However, here's some implementations of that function that are going to be the defaults that we kind of expect you to use. So what they've now enabled in the API here, the Flutter team, is that you've got, here's how we expect you to use it. However, you can use it however you want. Go crazy, right? Like, and they're only maintaining the contract of you pass the function that have to return the box constraints. So it's that similar premise as we were talking about earlier. And then down here we've got those static methods. So height unconstrained, max height unconstrained, max unconstrained. I guess that's width and height. We've got the width unconstrained. There's no constraints in either dimension. There's also unconstrained box. For those that don't know, that's another widget that I use quite often. This has some sort of overlap with the unconstrained box, but this is definitely a better API than the unconstrained one. Unmodified.
It looks like it's been in Flutter since 2021, so it's been around a while.
I've just never. I mean, this is the thing. This is why I love this. This is why some things I love about Flutter. Right?
Yep.
I needed this. I didn't know it existed. So now I know it exists. I can use it.
Great.
We were talking about earlier that there's a bunch of, we see the box widgets, right? So like decorated box transition, animated version of a decorated box. Yeah. So these are the ones that end in the word transition normally take a animation parameter. Animation of a decoration, and then you can pass a tween or whatever you want that maps that. That's actually quite handy. I like that. I would actually have used an animated container a lot of times because that was kind of the de facto standard, but I don't know when this widget went in either. Actually, I'm not seeing that. I'm just going a little exploration here on box widgets for a second. Fitted box, yeah. Fraction size box we mentioned.
Our friend.
Limited box, yeah.
It's a limited box.
Overflow box.
Gotta put on limited box.
Render box, which is the default render object for box widgets.
I get triggered by old songs. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Rotate. How often? Here's a question for you. How often do you use rotated box versus transform.rotate if you need to rotate something? Because there's a difference in them, their behavior.
Yeah, there is. I think I've used rotated box in one instance because it worked for what I needed, but I think I probably transform more often.
Yeah, so transform to rotate, for those that don't know, transform, the transform widget only applies to paint. There's nothing that applies to layout in the transform widget, right? So if you move it around, transform it, rotate it, skew it, whatever, it just changes the paint, the output of paint. Whereas the rotated box widget and others, they actually changed the layout as well. Yeah. So if you rotate, let's say you had something that was rectangular but long, like portrait, and then you rotated box, it now take up more width in the layout. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why it only does quarter turns, right? 90-degree turns, because that's solvable inside the layout model quite easily. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's basically the difference in a lot of these kind of widgets. that patterns throughout Flutter as well. We got size box, sized overflow box, sliver to box adapter. Wait. Interesting. Sliver varied extent list. So this is, oh, okay. So this varied though. Oh, is this so we can return back? Oh, okay. Interesting. You can return back a different extent for each different index based on the dimensions given to you. I don't actually have to use it, but I can see where that's useful. That's interesting. Look, scroll offset, preceding scroll extent, viewport main axis. So you're actually getting quite a few parameters to decide on how much space of which it should take up in the sliver list. Interesting. I've never actually really used a lot of the extent stuff, to be honest. I always find myself either I've got fixed height, which are always the same. And that's simple enough, right? Yep. Or you've got you want it to be intrinsically height by whatever the content is that you're displaying, right?
Yep.
But by the way, if anyone's curious about how I figured out the age of the other thing we were looking at, see that little page bent down thing in the upper right hand corner there? That takes you right to the Git repo. And on the Git repo for that item, if you go ahead and do that, yes. You can go to the line of code that you're looking at, and to the left of the numbers, there'll be a 3-dot menu, and one of the things is Git blame. And the blame.
That's what I was looking for. There'll just be Git blame up here on the top somewhere. Yeah, and this shows you all the lines and who put them in and when they changed, which is really helpful. When you go, this person.
I mean, I have. Yeah.
Prototypes.
Yeah.
4 years ago. Blame them.
Yeah. So I have a Flutter repo checked out all the time, but it's not as easy to get to. If I just want to know when this feature was added, it's all clicks away like this, which is really nice.
No.
Yeah, surprising actually. I'm surprised. I wonder if locally that's harder to determine in terms of Git database, right? Because you have to look at all of the patches. I don't know if Git blame like locally. You know, you can do Git blame on the command line. I wonder if there's actually.
Yeah, you could do. Yeah, you can evoke Git blame on just a single line of code in VS Code, and it will figure out the right.
Yeah, I can do it in my editor as well. I'm just like, I don't very often like look at that. You don't really get that kind of. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. I am gonna have to jump out, and before I go, there's a comment from Twitch that got put in there. You may want to delete. So
I don't have access to that.
Yeah. So
all right.
See you guys in a week.
Yeah.
See you then.
We'll be here.
Bye.
Yeah. So you want to do some routing coding as long as Ray's still sticking around?
Yes, definitely. Sorry, I was getting a bit. Yeah, unconstrained box. I think that's the last one anyway. Yeah.
Many Simon rabbit holes today. Yes.
Oh, it's fun. That's what everyone comes for.
I know.
We're learning new things.
Yep. I have a question for you, Simon, on asking you about your experience, and you as well, Randall.
Sure.
And also, I think that's a good opportunity to maybe shout out a fellow Flutter YouTuber who's making some really good videos. So there's Mikhail Zotyev. I don't know if you've seen his videos.
Sounds familiar, but yeah, I see a lot of videos. So yeah.
I can share a link with you.
If you pop a link in the private chat, I can post it out to everyone.
Okay. Yeah, I'll work on that while also talking. So he's making and he's made some great videos on scrolling and slivers that I've learned quite a bit from. So I want to ask you a question though about, like, you just saw the extent right? I had to do a really deep dive into the list view and the scroll view extents to implement scroll restoration feature. And the way you restore scroll instantly, like how Twitter and how Facebook does it, because you know how when you view a comment in a Twitter thread or you view a comment in a Facebook comment list, it takes you directly to the comment without doing the animated scroll. Yeah. Now in Flutter, that's not possible because the way the list renders, it renders
I'm smiling about this because we've actually covered this like for 3 weeks going, like a couple of weeks ago. Carry
I apologize.
No, carry on, because it's really good. No, this is really interesting. This is super interesting piece of go on, carry on, please.
Right. So the way I was able to do it via, I don't have a perfect implementation. There's still a little bit of calculation mistakes, but the way I was able to approximate it is by setting the item extent. So I will give it, hey, here are my rough estimate of the item extent. Let's first just render the list to the comment that I want, and then I will apply the math. I will, pass you the math for the items above it, and sometimes that's a little bit off. So you don't get to the comment directly, but most of the time it works.
There's also I don't know if you've looked into this. There's actually a scroll correction system as well, correct by, which also might help in that regard. If you can work out the calculated differences. I think yes. What you actually want to do in these situations is what we were actually investigating and we actually got working, is the idea of not having to deal with that at all. We can bring this probably up in a minute, but we'll talk about it briefly now, which is a lot of the time. So you've got two options, right? Which is I want to scroll down to a particular item in a list, right? Now the big problem that has, if when you've got a large list of data, what you don't have to do is load all that data, render all those widgets, only just discard them off the screen to know where I'm getting to, right? And that's effectively what happens, right? In those situations, when you don't have a fixed item height, you've got to do that because you need to understand where you're getting to. Now, the whole reason for that is in terms of the way that Flutter handles scroll when it's scrolling widgets, which is it's a pixel offset, right?
Right.
And so the way that we handled that in what we did was we re-implemented the scrolling view. So we didn't use the default ones. So now that restriction's gone. And then what we deal with is the widget that I want to display and an offset from that widget. And so what happens when you scroll, we find the nearest widget to the top of the viewport. We were doing that there's lots of ways you can do this, but that became the new 0 offset then. And then my index position, my scrolling offset is now relative to that first item. So basically you can keep scrolling and you've essentially not got the actual scrolling value when you interact is pixels delta to the index 0 item. That kind of makes sense. And that can be that index 0 item changes depending on when you stop scrolling and when you interact with it. So you basically just broken the scrolling into two sections, which is relative scroll to a particular item rather than an absolute scroll to items in the list.
Wow.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. And I just wanted to ask you about your experience there, and I'm glad that to hear that you have had some experience there.
The code is up on the gists if you want to take a look. There's definitely improvements we can make to it. We'll just kind of like threw it together in a few hours, right? Like
very.
We only have a limited time on the show, so like there's only so much you can do.
We'll want to take a look because when you mentioned the scroll offset correction, that's actually the integral second part. So first you guesstimate, you pass the item extent, so you can guess and put your scroll where you approximately should be, and then based on the scroll correction, you can do the math. You can subtract the pixels to move in a single frame your item to the top of the viewport. So that was the technique I used. But then, of course, you do have the offset itself sometimes has an offset. so you don't get it perfect in one offset correction.
So with the mechanism that we're using, that completely goes away, right? Because what you're doing is saying, render this comment here in the middle of the screen, and that's my 0 point. And now I'm rendering items above that and below that, depending on what obviously I display. Like there is no like jumping around. You're literally just displaying what's on the screen, and that's it. You don't have to do any calculations or anything.
Right.
So basically approaching scroll a different way. Right.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll definitely check out that code because the built-in Flutter way, very complex, took me a long time, and it's limited by you can only put it at the top. You can't put it in like the bottom or the middle.
Simon has made choice comments about the scroll controller over the last multiple months. I'd say choice comments. I'm not going to say anything. But
I'll need to tune in more. That's what I'm here for. That's the content I'm here for.
Exactly. If I bring it back up, I don't remember which one
I recognize that code.
Stack items. No, we did this like stack canvas widget, which is like an infinite canvas widget, which is pretty cool because this is done with we did a custom element and such like to actually what this ends up doing is only calling these build methods for the widgets that are visible on the screen based on where you scroll to. So if you had like 10,000 of these items, then you'd only be displaying the ones that you need to. This could obviously this is like what's the word? We're specifying the children at the moment. You could also change this to a builder system, right? Which is you can pass the parameters and return only the widgets that you want to display, right? But this actually was pretty cool. This uses basically we did our own custom render object that calls build during render, so that we can work out the constraints. So where was it? This calls back to the element, and basically, I'm going to go up and down here to quickly find the. I'll get back to the other piece in a second, but when it comes down to when it comes back to is this element callback. Here it is, which is basically loop over all the children that we've got and work out based on which rectangle overlaps with the viewport. And that's the list of children that we want to build. Now we've got those. This update children essentially drops the builders in, and we'll build those children. So this is like dynamically changing which children the widget has in the element and render tree based on the viewport that you're in. And it's pretty straightforward. I mean, we did the whole thing in like 470 odd lines of code. And then the actual render object just turns out to be setting up that controller. And then perform layout is just get the list of children and display them based on the offset that they've decided to be positioned at. Because this is like the idea is to have that this is the kind of widget where you might have a infinite plane of widgets that like a graph or something, that kind of thing.
Whoa. Anyway, that's incredible architectural work.
We've got these are all, by the way, up on Gists, and I'll post a link for anyone in the chat in a minute. So you can all it's all open. It's all under MIT. Go nuts. Do you know what I think? How we left this before is there was a bug, and I think we made a change at some point showing someone something else, and we never went back and fixed it. So I'm not sure if it's actually working at the moment. So I'm just going back through, just checking where we left it. It's this one here. It's this origin post, find new origin post. I just don't know if that was the last version that we had. Let me just 16th, the 4th of the 6th. We looked at it first. and 16th, number 2. So actually, let's have a look at this one. Should we run it? Let's run it.
I posted the link to your gists in the chat already.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Let's run this up and see what. How to be Simon. You don't want to be me.
Years of dedication, years of specialization, years of generalization at the same time.
So I just saw a couple of interesting global functions in Flutter when I was just going to Widgets build. Like, oh, what do these do? Whilst we're waiting for this to waiting for this to build, position dependent box. Size, child size. That's really helpful. I've actually needed that, and it's nice to have a function that just does the calculations for you. And that's actually
maybe everything you've ever complained about Flutter was actually already built, just hard to find.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the way it normally works. It's just this kind of math that you normally have to do, but it's nice to have a function that does it for you. That's just dependent box. Interesting. Pointed drag. Anyway, right. Those. Right, we've got it running. I think this is the first version. Let me bring up on screen. Hopefully.
Pretty
colors.
Colors accent. My first.
Yeah. So we scroll, and then what you see here in the log is post 0:7, which is this top one here, is the one it found, and it's the scroll position has been changed to like 21Y, right? So if I, it's always going to be relative to whatever widget's at the top left. So we didn't put any extent limits on these at the moment for demonstration purposes, but there's no reason you can't lock that based on the viewport height, right? It's easy. It would be easy to add, right? So if I hit play, I think the idea here was that basically if I scroll up, new posts are coming in all the time. See that how they're stacking up. But what it doesn't do, if I scroll down, it's not pushing me down the list. You see?
Ah, yes, that classic issue.
Yeah. So the idea, this was literally the whole point of doing this, is I could scroll up like Twitter. I can keep getting to new content as it comes in, because the scroll position is not related to the content. It's the content position I care about, not the scroll position, right? Like what piece of content am I looking at, not what X position, what Y position on the scroll I'm at, right? So as this is keep stacking content, but my scroll position is maintained, because my scroll position relates to the object on the screen at the top of the screen. In this case, post 131, right? This one here. Mm-hmm. So since that's there, it doesn't change. The Y position doesn't have to change, right? So that's this one here. That's for anyone that's looking, that would be the 4th of the 6th this year. It's in the list. So the implementation here is pretty straightforward. Let's just take a quick look through it while we're here. So we've got material app. Who cares? Feed repositories with change notifiers, just literally managing a list of strings so that we can kind of simulate posts coming in, and we do a little timer in there so that we can trigger it based on a cycle. We have a start stop for that. So our home screen has a scroll controller and a feed repository. We start with our scroll controller. We have our play pause button, which I'll pause for now and keep going up. And there's all this content that was been generated while we're talking. 100. Oh, too far. And once the feed changes, we rebuild the widget. Why not? But new post, probably remove that actually now I think about it. But new post v2. So here's our list. We take a list of strings. It could be a list of post objects. It really doesn't matter. This is some data. And then we just literally, again, like these examples, right? Like this, like what we chuck in an hour during the stream, right? So they're certainly not ready to be, used out of the box, but it gives people how you do this kind of thing, how you might approach it, right? So in this case, let's just scroll down. When we build, we have a notification listener, and when we end any scrolling event, we try and locate the new origin post for that scroll event, right? Then down here, we've got a scrollable with a custom multi-channel layout with our own delegate for laying out the posts, right? And then in this case, we go ahead and like lay out all the posts. Obviously, we can restrict the number of posts that we're laying out and choose to do that differently. This is mainly around how do you handle the scroll problem, right? But that would be simple enough to do that. I'm not we'll be worried about that. And then the layout, the actual this scroll multi delegate, whatever here is just takes that origin post and our viewport offset. So that's the Y offset relative to the origin post. And if we sort of continue down, the layout ends up being very much what that position dependent box does, in a sense of we work out where our pixel offset is, right? So normal scroll pixel offset. Where would our origin post be in terms of index to understand where we're at? And then we lay out the widgets above that. So we go negative above that until we feel. And this is lays out, I think, all of the posts, right? But you could just limit this on the viewport, right? So when you reach the top of the viewport, it stops. But anyway, so lay out and position those children going upwards and then going downwards below this handles the origin post and then everything below that. Post obviously is just, and then what we do here is a post card. One of these cards has the annotated region for the post itself, so we know which element is at that position on the screen, basically. This play pause button is just the animate button at the top. And then when you go to, as I said, when you stop scrolling, where is it? Up here. Oh, but I've gone too far. Sorry. There we are. When we stop that scrolling to find the new origin, we ask the current layer. We use debug layer here. I think we fixed this in the later one. You can just take, if you move some of the stuff into render object, you just got a layer that you can use. But the idea is you find the annotations for the offset that we're looking at, which actually at this moment in time would always be offset 0, I think, if you remember rightly. And then based on the results that we get back, find the first entry at the top of the screen and set that as the origin post, and then jump to the Y position relative to that. So it's an immediate update. So as soon as you stop, the scroll, the Y position for the scroll is immediately updated. There's no visual change because the delta of those two changing is the same, right? And that's it. Again, not like
that's it. Just that.
Well, no, what I'm trying to say is like I know it's like, but it's like 300 lines, right? We're not talking about like 10,000 lines custom widgets. Yeah. It's just about using the right things, right? In this case, we're using the annotations to achieve something. So this whole annotation thing could be lifted out into like a list widget, right? I know we chucked it in here like this, but you can lift it out to a generic widget. You don't have to like have your posts have that in them. It can just wrap them, right? Things like that you can definitely use to actually achieve your whatever goal it is that we're trying to get to.
Yes, very cool. So to use and build on top and understand this, you would need to understand the multi-child layout delegate and how to build those render objects. You need to understand the annotation layer. You need to understand a little bit about the render objects and the microtask. And I'm just listing out all the things I don't understand so far to make a mental note to go back and check it out. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Simon.
So,
this was super cool.
These are all so just for people, yourself and people at home, if you go to my gist page, I think you said you put a link in the chat, did you? Yeah, it's in the chat for anyone that wants it. Round up it in there, and then you can just go through and find you can actually search. If you search user, and then I don't know what do we call this? I don't know, list. It's got a list in somewhere. There you go. And then we'll find all the ones that have list written in them, which is probably going to be way too many actually. But this one was on the 4th of the 6th. So you go back. I'll put a link to this particular one in the chat. Preserves position scroll. There you go. That's what we called it. It's hard to name these things, you know.
Yeah, the naming was tough every time.
But it looks like when we on the 16th of the 7th, I remember we readdressed this a little bit and we started kind of. I'm not sure where we left this, and I don't particularly want to pick it back up because we've already done this to death. But like we were talking about doing navigation, and we've completely gone off that now, and I think we're going to have to wrap up actually. But
well, this is helpful for me.
This is if you maybe take a look at actually is this what's that unmodified one? 16th. That's good. 16th to the 7th. Did we post that? I don't know. Preserve scripts part 2. And we have the stat canvas part 2 as well. I wonder actually, let me just grab this and just see if it builds and runs and works. It should do. Normally when we post things, it's all functional. So we're quick. So this one, which is a follow-up, which I'll post in the chat as well. The idea of this one is exactly the same thing. I think in this, that's got a jumping problem. I remember we were looking at that, and I can't remember what we did, and we should fix it.
We were distracted the following week to not actually solve that.
Yeah, and we didn't chase it back up. But I think this one was very around that similar idea of let's migrate all this stuff out into its own. It's where we started. I don't think we ended up finishing it, but yeah, we started doing some other infinite scroll controllers, and it's definitely could take this step. I feel like this could be taken a step further into a proper widget, and maybe we could spend some time doing that and stick it up in a package or something.
Yeah, well, with what you've set up here, if like you make some posts about it on like Twitter or wherever, or Reddit, then you can spread the breadcrumbs. So that way, when people or developers with more resources and time that have, a financial obligation to solve this problem,
right?
Then they can hopefully pick it up and maybe contribute back to the community. I mean, it's a very common use case with social media or any type of feed app. You got to open the comment without loading, however many posts above.
Totally. I think there's that kind of. What am I thinking? I'm thinking the fact that when people do apps, I mean, so you talked about experience, right? I think you mentioned that earlier, Ray. Like I've been building apps and software for 25 years, right? Actually, maybe it's 27 years or something like that now. I don't know. Round at 25. And I think about 15 of that, maybe just under 15 of that is Android. What was it? I actually don't know. 17. Crap, I'm old. 17 of that is Android and mobile, right? Like that was the predominantly the major thing. And after you do this for this long, it's like all of this becomes second nature is the wrong word, but you've got because you've got experience. You can back all your decisions onto something that's happened from your memory, from your past, right? So because you've got experience, whenever these problems come up, it's like you already have an avenue of how you solve the problem. Does that kind of make sense? Or direction that you want to go in.
And probably a few ways that don't solve the problem as well. I mean, I can tell you scars I've shown for all the ways I've done it wrong.
Yeah, that's another. I will say that we've mentioned this on the show before. I want to re-mention this for anyone that's getting a bit of imposter syndrome, because I get that. Every developer gets that. This is not like right. It's because you think of that and go, I could never do that. Like, that's just amazing. These are the kind of things that go through your head. And you got to think about it. No, it's just they know more, they've had more practice. That's what you have to remember.
Yep.
Just more practice, more
Yep.
learning, and you'll get there, right? And I think there's that notion of just, applying yourself to some of these things, right?
Right. What's that phrase? Experience is what you get when you don't get what you wanted.
Yeah. Sorry. I just want to say when this was it. When you see, like, I just want to put this out there again, and I've said this before. If you're browsing GitHub and you see this final, like, this polished code, and you're, oh my god, this is amazing. Like, you see Ray's code about his navigation utils. You need to look at that Git blame. You need to look at the history and go, oh my god, look at all these different versions that he went through. The very first one was really, really basic, and then he improved on it over time to get what he has now. And for the problem is, in your head, you only look at what's there now, and you go, "Oh my god, I can never just write that," because you never do just write that. It grows, the code evolves, you refactor it.
Yeah.
You never just go write perfect code like that, just out the gate, right? It changes over time, and I think that's something to always remember. That imposter syndrome comes when you're looking at something and you're looking at the final version, right? That gold standard that took a long time. How many hours, Ray, do you say you spent on this? Like 12
over 1,200, unfortunately.
Yeah, but this is the point, right? Like, that is a really good example there of saying, like, someone looks and go, they did spend like 8 hours or a day building this thing. No, it's 1,200 hours, and it's like, it's a completely different scale. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that, right? Like, you have to put the effort in to get something good out of it, like you have to put the practice and the thought into it. And sadly, that also means, like, some of that spare time.
You can't do everything.
No, exactly, right?
That's your real limitation. Sorry. Speaking of the time, so yes, this is running on pretty long.
Sorry.
Hopefully,
we're way over time on what we should have been, but it was a good conversation.
Oh, sorry. I'm not trying to tell you you're the host. I'm just trying to invite myself back on sometimes, if ever,
Anytime.
If ever you're motivated to help me get navigation utils to V1, I would love to, hear your feedback and your API comment. So,
yes,
but you've given me some pointers already, so I appreciate that.
Well, I think this is about also the audience. Like, if you try navigation utils, make sure you give feedback on and raise issues on the GitHub and give Ray the feedback he needs to improve for everyone, right? And even better, make some PRs or just start some discussions around what could be done to make it version 1. Let's get version 1.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, if you look at the PR the issues history, you'll see that it's I think every issue was dealt with in a very respectful and encouraging manner, and that's another thing I'm very proud of is being open to all these ideas and demonstrating that through the past few years with how I handled the issues. So definitely open an issue. I don't have the prescription. I don't want to necessarily prescribe what to do with navigation. I just have currently what I think works the best for me. And people have some been using it. It's adhered to some principles, but what you think, I really, really value. And there's so much that's still unsolved. So yeah, definitely go there and give me your thoughts.
Great. Cool. Alrighty then. We should probably wrap up.
Well, I guess I'll head off.
Thanks for joining us. We'll maybe see you again sometime soon. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. All right. Bye. Bye, everyone. See you later.
See you 160.